Welcome back and thanks again for joining us. Now, the recently concluded World Economic Forum on Africa held in Cape Town has shined the spotlight on the many issues that plague the continent, issues of a growing poverty and issues of inequality, as well as the impressive recent growth rate of many African countries is the focus of the Africa Union Summit or African Union Summit being held in South Africa. So you can see a number of issues coming to the fore there. Never one issue when it comes to Africa. There are myriad of them. The recently released Africa Report 2015, or Africa Growth Report, I should say, touches on these key issues through various pieces by industry leaders. Joining me now to talk to us about the report and its key insights and how we change our narrative is Media Tenor International CEO Roland Schatz. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning.
7 years now that you've been releasing the Africa Growth Report. Talk to us about the narrative or the trajectory of the continent. Is it going on an upward bend, or are we seeing a bit of an up and down or downward spiral?
Well, we see right now more a downward spiral, which is not reflecting the facts. The facts of the continent are actually good, but the leaders, especially the corporate leaders, have not found a way to speak about it. They are very busy in making the growth happen, but they are less good in talking about it.
Why is that?
You have this phenomenon of these hidden champions. You have world market leaders in South Africa and other parts of Africa, but they are busy doing their work, but they are not so good in speaking with journalists and explaining why they are so successful.
And talk to us about the importance of such explanation and making sure that the correct story is being told about Africa. Many people are saying that it's Africa's time now and that we're the next growth point, and some are saying that that's a false narrative. What is the importance of reporting accurately enough with the likes of this particular report on the continent?
Well, if you look into my country, I'm a German. We were not perceived as a strong country 15 years ago. We were the slow country in Europe. And within 15 years, we managed to change that narrative. The World Soccer Championship in 2006 helped a lot, that the world perceived us in a stronger way. And when the crisis came in 2008, Germany was not hit as expected and as it was taught to me at university. When I went to university, everybody told me when America catches a cold, the rest of the world is really sick. In today's world, look at Germany. As we do business with Africa, we do business with Asia. If we have less growth with America, we are able to outbalance this. Now the question is, how strong is Africa to follow this path? And you can always outbalance certain weaknesses if your story and your competencies are told in the media in Europe, in Asia, and in America. But this is not really the case. The headlines are Ebola, the headlines are, as we just heard, HIV/AIDS and other negative stories.
Is the problem with the continent itself? So are we perpetuating that negative story about the continent, or is it perhaps the flow of news being from north to south or west to east, that they come here and they only do a very superficial report of what's happening based on the headlines and don't really go in depth to see what growth there is and report back on the story? So basically, whose responsibility is it? Is it locals who are supposed to tell the good story, or are we supposed to make sure that those who report about us do so factually?
Well, I can only give advice that you follow existing examples who are doing better. If you look at this magazine where you have Chichi Mponya on the front page, where she does a fantastic job by explaining what the company is doing, if we see more of these reports, the world will understand how rich and how strong the economy is. You can see from other companies outside of Africa that they have deep trust in Africa. There's a telco in Vietnam called Viettel, and they are investing heavily in Burundi, in Mozambique, in lots of countries in Africa with an impressive success rate. They are showing the telco business in Africa how to do the business. So if you start to exchange a little bit more, I think that's the path to go in future.
Critics might argue that one has an obligation as a journalist, perhaps, to make sure that they unearth those stories of corruption, that they unearth those stories of maladministration, etc. And I suppose there is justification to that. But is there a responsibility also to then unearth the good stories where positive news is given a platform?
You are exactly hitting the pot. It's the point that we focus on those things which are bad, but we shouldn't miss out the other things. If we have 3 stories in the news, like I watched SABC News on Sunday, and the entry stories were all about violence against people, I'm not the person who says don't cover violence, because it is a disaster that people are still thinking they can put force on other people. So we have to cover that. But if this is the only story we are covering out of Africa, then we don't see the other facets. Africa is leading in terms of medicine. When you look at what you have achieved over the years, most of the relevant clinics in Switzerland are owned by South Africans. Wow. What you have done in the area of X-rays is world leading, it's cutting edge. So if you manage to balance the selection of your news in a better way, I think that gives people the full picture. How Western media are covering Africa reminds me a little bit how Germany played Brazil in the World Championship last year. We played 7-1, but the way how the German media would cover it would be Brazil scored 1 goal and they would miss out the 7. And we are a little bit in this tendency that we focus on what is not going good and we take away the other parts. But we always have to keep in mind there's an audience out there who is reading our newspaper, who's watching the TV news, and they get their inspiration, whether they do something or not. And if we keep the headlines on Africa, on those parts which need to improve, no doubt about that, but we forget to touch about what is working, and we don't cover stories like the ones from Vietnam. We are giving a false picture, and by giving a false picture, we don't lead into the right direction.
Thank you so much for your time. I do take it there's a lot of balance that we can find in the Africa Growth Report 2015. Yes. I thank you so much for that. It is available online and also in various bookstores. If you're looking for it online, it's at www.mediatenor.com. So that's mediatenor.com, mediatenor.com. Thank you so much for joining us, CEO Roland Schatz, talking to us about the newly published Africa Growth Report 2015. My thanks to you, sir.
Thank you.